Well, good morning. My name is Rocky Moretti. I'm the Director of Policy and Research at TRIP. TRIP is a nonprofit transportation research organization. We've been putting reports out since 1971. Since then, we've released over 600 reports at the state and national level. In fact, this year, this is TRIP's 8th state report that we've released. TRIP is an organization supported by a coalition of manufacturing, insurance, construction, labor, and engineering organizations. They look to us to put out the latest information on the condition, the use, and the safety of the nation's transportation system. The format today is after I give my initial comments on the report, we're going to hear from Kit Kramer, who's the president and CEO of the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. Then we'll hear from Jake Cashin, who's the vice president of government affairs with the North Carolina Chamber. After that, we'll go to questions. And we'll also, during the question period, we've asked the North Carolina Department of Transportation to have a spokesperson. And we're fortunate to have Allison Tamer. She's a program support manager with the WNC Strong program. And she'll be able to address questions that you may have that are really more appropriate for the organization that thankfully is doing a tremendous job in addressing these significant challenges. The name of our report is WNC Strong and really focuses on the tremendous damage that occurred back in the fall in the Western North Carolina area due to Hurricane Helene, and is based on our analysis of information that is being prepared on an ongoing basis by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, supplemented by additional information from the U.S. Department of Transportation. This report takes a look at the initial impact of Hurricane Helene on the North Carolina's transportation system, and then takes a look at the ongoing effort by the state to go ahead and repair and ultimately reconstruct a significant portion of the state's transportation system. Back in September of 2024, Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina with up to 31 inches of rain in a very short period of time. Most critically, 106 people died in North Carolina due to storm damage from Hurricane Helene, and nationally that number was over 300. So one of the most devastating hurricanes the nation has faced. Flooding in the Western North Carolina area led to 9,400 sites where the transportation system was damaged. This resulted in the closure of 1,400 state-maintained roads and over 800 state-maintained bridges. Some of the most heavily damaged portions of the state's transportation system included portions of Interstate 40, portions of U.S. routes 19, 64, and 74, and also of North Carolina Route 197 near Pensacola. The report goes into a lot more detail on some of those routes that were damaged. The immediate response was overwhelming. Over 2,000 employees of the North Carolina Department of Transportation responded to evaluate and begin immediate repairs. They were supported by several other transportation agencies who also, from their states, sent over some of their employees to help with the effort, in addition to numerous private contractors and consultants. There was a significant immediate response to evaluate the tremendous damage that had occurred. The initial findings were that of the 9,400 damaged sites, 6,800 of them would require additional rebuild or reconstruction of the structure. And this, again, focused on some of these major roads that we've mentioned, but also recognizing the devastating damage throughout Western North Carolina. Since then, as of May of this year, so last month, 97% of storm-related closures on state-maintained roads had reopened. However, 42 state routes still portions remain closed, and 53 state-maintained roads only have partial access today. Repair or replacement on about half of the state's bridges have been completed, and we've also seen significant repairs on large culverts across the Western North Carolina area. While the replacement of 16 state-maintained bridges have been completed, there's still another 138 state-maintained bridges that will need to be replaced, a significant large-term challenge. We've also seen the state's rail network was devastated, and although there's been significant repairs, there's still services that have been are still not available in several counties, including rail segments in Buncombe, McDowell, Yancey, and Mitchell counties, as the state continues to see repairs working with the private carriers completed. Looking into the future, the state points out that some of the more significant reconstruction projects are going to take through 2027 to 2028 to completely complete the long-term reconstruction. And this includes portions of Interstate 40, which it currently has a portion of it open, one lane in each direction, but obviously the entire segment needs to be rebuilt, and also portions of US 19, North Carolina routes 197, as well as US routes 64 and 74 are some of the most expensive and critical projects that will take a couple more years for full completion. In terms of the cost of this, the current estimate is the transportation damage from Hurricane Helene was approximately $5 billion. At this point, the federal government is anticipated to cover about 80% of this, leaving the state still needing to spend approximately $917 million on these projects. North Carolina Department of Transportation continues to pay for these repairs up front and anticipates significant impacts on their cash reserves in 2026 and 27. And so moving forward, the state is still working with the federal government in terms of reimbursements for these projects. If the state is ultimately required to fund about 20% of these improvements, they anticipate that in terms of the impact on its own budget, in terms of other needed transportation projects across the state to improve safety, address reliability and congestion, and to improve road and bridge conditions, that if the approximately $917 million that is going to be needed to complete the WNC Strong projects are not reimbursed at the federal level, that's the equivalent of about 18 months of resurfacing across the state, 3 years of their ongoing bridge program. And so you can see the significant impact that would have long-term in North Carolina. So let me conclude there before we hear from our other speakers and just point out that the North Carolina Department of Transportation has really done a heroic job of addressing this devastating damage from Hurricane Helene. But moving forward, they also have significant transportation challenges across the state, and it will be critical that the ongoing funding in North Carolina of its transportation system allows the state to not only complete these needed projects in Western North Carolina, but across the state have the ability to provide a transportation system that's reliable, safe, and well-maintained. So with that, I'm going to call on Kit to give us some comments from Asheville.
Thanks, Rocky. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about what's been going on in Western North Carolina since in the last 8 months. The damage was extreme. In fact, I'm kind of living in dread of the anniversary coming back and all the imagery being shown again, because things are so much better now to a degree. We're kind of running parallel paths here in Western North Carolina. There are aspects of our community that are open for business. The work that was done by all levels of government to help bring us back to where we are today has been heroic. I can't complain about any of that. I so appreciate all of the efforts. Transportation is absolutely critical to being able to restore the other aspects of infrastructure that were damaged in this storm and into the relief efforts themselves. And while we have made so much progress in so many ways, we still have so much to do in pockets of Western North Carolina. And you know, it also is not lost on me that we have projects, transportation projects that are completely apart from anything related to hurricane relief that we want to see funded, as do people throughout the state. So we have an ongoing concern about the funding level for our transportation infrastructure. We're well known for good roads. We need those roads restored in Western North Carolina, and we need to maintain focus on the recovery where the recovery is needed most. We've got so many bridges and privately owned properties as well, roads and bridges that were washed out that are just absolutely essential to a return to normality. And we are very cognizant of the fact that we are a regional economy and that it's important not only that Asheville be restored, but that all of Western North Carolina be restored. We are communities of small business, which makes them unique and so appealing for people to visit. Tourism is an important component for many communities throughout Western North Carolina, and people have seen the imagery and are fearful about returning. I want you to get past that fear. Come, bring all your money, spend your money, come visit, have a great time. But on a parallel path, we've also got to remember that we have significant infrastructure needs through transportation that still need to be addressed. So part of our role here at the Chamber and in chambers throughout Western North Carolina, as well as other business organizations, we're all continuing to talk about the need for funding. It's just, I know it's an enormous amount of money, but this was an unheard of type of event that nobody anticipated. That wiped out not only roads and bridges, but our water system in Asheville. It took out our ability to communicate with our family and loved ones around the country, to do business. We have recovered in many, many ways in that regard, but we still need help in getting this infrastructure, especially transportation infrastructure, addressed.
Thank you, Kit. Now we're going to hear from Jake Cashin.
Yes, first and foremost, thank you to everyone on the call today. The recovery taking place in Western North Carolina is unprecedented, and transportation infrastructure is just one piece of it. We do appreciate the tireless efforts of so many and the opportunity to talk today about connectivity. The NC Chamber has long advocated for transportation funding when it comes to North Carolina's transportation network. As you all know, the way we fund our infrastructure today is largely focused on the motor fuel tax. For the last decade, the NC Chamber has led coalitions around this effort, and policymakers have been chipping away at diversification. We have seen some great progress and added certainty and predictability to the process of funding projects through the STIP. Our transportation funding challenges are compounded by tremendous growth in our state. Moving people and products safely and efficiently remains a top priority. All of these challenges existed before Helene. Since Helene, NCDOT has shown incredible leadership in recovery efforts. The launch of their road reopening dashboard provided transparency as they marshaled every resource to get people and products moving throughout Western North Carolina. They continue to work tirelessly to become better connected with the infrastructure. This report by our friends today at TRIP highlights the fact that we have to have the resources to do both things. We must continue to support recovery in Western North Carolina, and we must continue to make investments in the transportation network statewide. The NC Chamber is committed to advancing both of these efforts. We believe that the efforts started a decade ago by the North Carolina General Assembly to make massive investments into the network is one of the biggest untold success stories of the state. This topic needs to remain at the forefront if we want North Carolina to continue to be competitive for jobs and investment. The NC Chamber is actively engaged in advocating for new and diversified funding opportunities, And as we move into the future, stable and sustainable resources will be required. We appreciate the knowledgeable team at TRIP and the diligent team at NCDOT. And as always, we appreciate the people of Western North Carolina. We will not forget you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jake. I'm going to now ask my colleague Carolyn Kelly to explain how we'll proceed with questions. And also, again, want to point out that Allison Tamer from the North Carolina Department of Transportation, who's working on the WNC Strong program, will also be available for questions if you address those questions to her.
Thanks, Rocky. And thanks to Kit and Jake for joining us this morning. As Rocky said, I'm Carolyn Kelly. I'm the Director of Communications and Research for TRIP. At this point, we'll be able to have a brief Q&A with our panelists and also with Allison with the NCDOT. So if there are questions that you'd like to ask, you can use either the raise hand function that you see at the bottom of your screen, or you can submit those questions to the chat. I'll then be able to promote you to a panelist so that we can see and hear you ask your questions live, just as we would in a in-person news conference. If you would rather have me read your question, you can submit that to the chat bot, and I'm happy to do that as well. While we wait for some questions to come in, I'll also note that the full report, as well as the corresponding news release, is up on the TRIP website. You can find that right now at tripnet, tripnet.org. We will also have a recording of the news conference available on our website within the next 30 to 45 minutes or so. So again, thanks to everybody for joining us this morning. And if there are any questions, like as I said, you can either use the raise hand function or you can submit your questions in the chat. I see a question coming in from Charles Petty. Charles, I'll promote you to a panelist, and then once you unmute your line, you can go ahead and ask your question. All right, Charles, you can unmute your line and go right ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Good morning. And this will be to Mr. Rocky. Good morning. With Spectra News, we're wondering, we try to do character community-based questions and stories. And we mentioned the two reports that were from federal and state agencies at the beginning of your presentation. Was there any local community input? Because we have been sending up reporters to Western North Carolina ever since the storm hit and trying to home in on the small communities and towns that were impacted but otherwise could have been left out. Were there any local community members or civic organizations that were reporting things on the ground that were contributing into your assessment of this report that you've released?
In terms of the damage and then the ongoing recovery, really we focused largely on a tremendous amount of material that the North Carolina Department of Transportation has been making available on a regular basis. And I believe in our material, we include a link to their dashboard. And of course, if you send an email along, I think my email's in a lot of the material, I'll be happy to also link you to some of the secondary material. And it certainly pointed out to some of the communities that were most damaged in terms of the storm and really had their ongoing daily life most significantly impacted. So that might be helpful for you in trying to focus on some of the regions that obviously have been most impacted.
Absolutely. And the last question, as far as secondary roads, we've been talking mainly about highways. How are they anticipated to take longer to repair or about the same length of time?
I think Allison would be the best person to address that. I mean, in terms of state maintained versus non-state maintained, I suspect is kind of what you're getting at.
Yes, absolutely.
On behalf of the DOT, obviously we are certainly focused on the state maintained roads. The emergency management group, state emergency management, is overseeing the private road construction. I'm not familiar with that, so I'm so sorry that I can't speak directly to that and the length of time that is going to be going. But certainly we're very concerned with Western North Carolina and getting roads opened as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks. And our next question comes from Will Doran. Will, you can unmute your line and go ahead with your question.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it. Will Doran from WRAL in Raleigh. I'm curious that, there's a mention of these funding needs are going to push back the state's, abilities to do just kind of general work by, I think, it was 18 months for some things, maybe 3 years for other things. I'm curious with, hurricane season now coming up again, here in 2025 soon, how that could potentially compound these issues and what steps DOT has taken to prepare for that.
Yes, thank you for your question. So certainly hurricane season is we were prepared for that every year within DOT. We're not a stranger to our hurricanes. So there have been some funds allocated for disaster recovery. Certainly within this budget year, we've expended those within Helene. So, we have flexibility within our budget and within a lot of our funds to be able to take care of any of those needs. I cannot speak specifically to the specific steps that we would take come a hurricane, but I will say we are working towards preparedness now. We've learned a lot of lessons from Helene on, some steps that we can take, hopefully to, build back recovery.
Well, and you didn't ask me, but I think that it's important that we continue the approach in trying to diversify funding for transportation infrastructure, because this type of thing happens to our friends in Eastern North Carolina a lot, as they have said during this process. And so I think finding us a way to sustain funding for transportation over the long run is going to be an important priority for the state.
Thank you. And there's one question from Carrie Beal of Fox Carolina News in the chat box. She asked, is there a map web link anywhere that has updates on the roads and bridges that remain closed, or any resource people can use? Carrie, I'll note that in the trip report that'll be up on our website, we do have a link to NCDOT's dashboard, where they've got a map where they keep very up-to-date tabs on the roads that are remained closed, those that have been repaired. And Allison, if you'd like to add anything to that, or other resources where the public can see the latest updates.
Yes, as always, we have a drivenc.gov or .gov website that has all of the closings that you can get for all of North Carolina. There is a filter on the website that you can filter specifically for Helene closures, and you can see those directly.
Great. I see one other question. I know that we did have a temporary issue with the web address for the link to the trip report. We're working on fixing that right now. It should be fixed, but if you do have any issues accessing the report on the trip website, give that a moment, and we're working on fixing that. So if there's issues, that'll be up momentarily, or you can contact Rocky or myself, and we were happy to send it to you directly.
Caroline, I see one more question from Felicia Somnus.
Yep, and that was about the link on the report.
I see. Okay.
I do see that it's up there now. So I believe that covers all of the questions that have come in, but if there's anything else that our panelists would like to add, you can go ahead.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't again say we're open for business. And while we are running parallel paths, we need visitors who are ready to have a great time, but also going to bring their money and want to get re-engaged with all the businesses throughout Western North Carolina. There's great information at exploreasheville.com if you're trying to find what the status is of things. Because there are parts of the community in each of our cities throughout Western North Carolina that were untouched. But then there are parts that still need sustained investment. And we appreciate all the support we've gotten from all over the state and the country as it relates to this storm recovery.
Thank you, Kit. And I'll take the final comment. If there was ever any doubt how vital our transportation system is to our daily lives, last fall we learned a lesson in how vital that system is. And certainly We've seen the North Carolina Department of Transportation and sister state transportation organizations who work together respond in a tremendous way, but there's certainly a long way to go. So I want to thank our panelists for taking time from their day to participate. And certainly I want to thank the attendees who participated as well. And hope everyone has a.
Rocky, we do have a couple more questions. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, but there were a couple questions that just snuck back in.
By all means.
So Jane Sartwell asked, how will the return of the rail system impact recovery as well?
Allison, do you want to address that?
Oh, I was thinking Kit might want to address that.
Sure.
Yes. Being here.
I'm
But
happy.
yeah, go ahead, Kit, and then I can
From an
jump in.
economic perspective.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're part of a system. So the interstates are part of a system, so is rail. Supply chains have been impacted. There have been individual stories. Our friends at Baxter, for example, who produce IV bags, created there was a real situation because they received so much damage. And that's just one small example. So we, in fact, I live in Swannanoa, which is one of the very hard hit areas. And I heard one of my neighbors on social media said, I heard a train whistle tonight, and that was super exciting. So that's another aspect of transportation infrastructure that absolutely must be addressed. I don't envy the decision makers in terms of deciding what comes first. And we're learning patience around here because there are still so many needs. It's helpful to know. I appreciate knowing that there's a website that talks about the various projects underway as well, because people understanding that help is coming is also super important.
And we have one last question from Felicia Sonmez. Felicia, if you unmute your line, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you all so much for having the call and for giving us the chance to participate. My question is about debris removal here in Western North Carolina. There have been reports this week that there's a road where there's like 150 trucks per day hauling debris out of, I believe it's near Clyde, and a lot of those trucks have been overturning, causing major accidents because the road just doesn't seem to be wide enough for them to pass. Just wondering if anyone from NCDOT or any other panelists might have any comment whether you all are aware of that and whether the state might be taking any action to rectify that situation. Thank you so much.
Again, I don't know your specific area that you're talking about directly. I know that a lot of the roadways and what has been going back is temporary. Certainly we wanted to get access to people as much as possible and as quickly as possible. And so a lot of the roadways are constructed in a temporary fashion. So certainly they're going to be not as wide as what would be going back permanently. So I hope that addresses your question. And I don't know please re-ask if I missed the boat on that.
Sure, yeah. Oh yeah, it's not a road that's been sort of like it's not like I-40 or anything that's been sort of narrowed after the storm. It's just I think just a local road where the volume of debris removal trucks that have been going through is just enormous, and the road just doesn't seem to be equipped for that volume of and those size of trucks.
Okay, I'm sorry. And you're talking about maybe a resurfacing to correct some of that damage on a road that wasn't damaged.
Yeah, or just sort of, like trucks are literally overturning on this road and causing a lot of, damage to, I guess, the vehicles, the people. So yeah, just wanted to ask if, anything was being done about that.
If you have a specific, if you would love to, if you would send that to me, we can make sure we get that to the specific office in the area who could take a look at that and see if there was anything we could do with that.
Okay, great.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. That's all I have to say. I mean, with every one of these recovery initiatives, it creates a ripple effect. So I feel for the local government folks in the area who are also probably working with DOT to address that.
We've got one more question from Will Hoffman with the Asheville Citizen-Times. Will, I've promoted you a panelist, but I don't see you come up yet. But I'll go ahead and read the question that was entered into the chat box, which is that could NCDOT address deferred maintenance on statewide routes? He said, I see the report indicates redirected DOT funding could lead to a drop in the condition and smoothness of pavement. Is this statewide?
It would be, if that is the route that we would have to take for funding and redirecting some of that, we would take that across from all the divisions across the state. But we also, I will say, when we're looking at resurfacing projects, there is a prioritization that goes into that. And so certainly, as there is need in various areas, I'm sure they would be looking at that strategically.
Carolyn, you're muted.
I believe that addresses all of the questions or the hands that are raised at the moment. If there are additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself and to Rocky, and we can either answer the questions or put you in touch with our other panelists.
Thanks, Carolyn, and again, thanks to the panelists and also the attendees, and hope everyone has a safe day. Thank you.